With a lot of the history not being taught in school these days, most of us Gen Zs are left to fend or learn history on our own through the internet. Now, Nostalgic Sensation is dedicated to revisiting memory lane, listening to old songs, and going down memory lane through music, shows, TVs, ads, and every other, digital content that is left of what is in the past. It's also dedicated to learning the history as a Gen Z alongside my amazing viewers. So today we are going to be learning, or I am going to be learning rather, if you've never heard this, history bits before, then you're welcome to learn alongside with me. But this is going to be my first time diving into the Irish potato famine, the British genocide, and how they starved Ireland. Now, I've seen it in a lot of movies, usually where like movies and cartoons where they just hint at it, like it's not really talked about in details, where they make side jokes about it or talk about it or mention it briefly. So today I've decided to I typically delve more into music and all this good vibe, but I'm also dedicated to learning. So which is why we are going to be diving into a little bit of history today. So without further ado, let's dive right into today's video. Please do not forget to subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and share your thoughts in the comment section with us. And do not forget to like the video as well. So yeah, without further ado, let's dive right into today's video.
Many know today the Irish potato blight in 1845 was the cause of the potato disease originally from North America that affected the potato in northern France, Netherlands, and Belgium. But none of these countries were as dependent as a food source as was Ireland, and when the disease reached the Irish fields, the results were devastating. One could say the millions of Irish perished due to the potato blight, but they actually starved to death due to starvation, inhumane treatment, and extortion by the British. Nassau William Sr., economist to the Crown, is quoted as saying, "Only 1 million Irish are likely to die, and that will not be enough to do much good." This is the facts of how British starved Ireland. Please subscribe and tell us in the comments below if you believe the British were responsible. The potato was not the only food source Ireland had at the time. Ireland's soil was rich and fertile and ideal for livestock grazing. During the famine, an abundance of wheat, oats, barley, beef, poultry, dairy, fruit and vegetables were farmed on Ireland's soil that the Irish themselves worked to produce. Only the Irish were not allowed to consume these crops. The fields the Irish worked on was mostly owned by British landlords who sold and exported most of the crops, grain and livestock for England's consumption. The British government's indifference to the famine helped cause thousands of needless deaths. On the eve of the famine, the population in Ireland stood at about 8.5 million. The British felt Ireland was overpopulated and that it was the fault of the Irish people for being poor. The Irish were referred to as being lazy, barbaric, and barely human. 2 million Irish men, women, and children perished by starvation and related diseases during the famine, and another 2 million immigrated from the island to escape poverty and starvation. British colonized Ireland and confiscated the land to raise beef cattle for the English market, forcing the Irish into deeper poverty and out to live on the land that had more rocky terrain. The estates were owned by absentee English landlords that charged exorbitant amounts of rent. Rent collection was left in the hands of the landlord's agents or middlemen. This assured the landlord of a regular income and relieved them of direct responsibility while leaving the tenants open to exploitation by the middleman. Landlords lived their life in England and perhaps visited their estates once or twice a lifetime. Tenant holdings were so small that no crop other than potatoes would suffice to feed families. And so this is how millions of Irish became reliant on the potato. 90% of land in Ireland was owned by the British landlords. The Anglican Church was more than just a spectator to these events. The church owned 5 million acres of Irish land.
Wow.
In the first winter of the famine, while 400,000 Irish starved to death, the worst year of mass starvation, The amount of food that was exported out of Ireland proves there was enough food to feed the entire Irish population that was starving to death during the famine twice over. English landlords continued to export food from Ireland to England. The British government could have outlawed the export of food while people starved. However, the shipping records indicate the government allowed the landlords to export £17 million sterling worth of grain, cattle, flour, eggs, and poultry, as well as fruits and vegetables.
Wow.
Food that
While
could have
people were
fed 12 million
starving.
people, twice the number of Irish tenant farmers dependent on the potatoes. The food was shipped
Wow.
from ports in some of the worst famine-stricken areas of Ireland, and armed British regiments guarded the ports and granaries to guarantee British merchants and absentee landlords their profits. And when food prices went up, they did not increase Ireland's wages. They also imposed tariffs on food, making food more expensive to purchase. While
Wow.
Irish men, women, and children lay dying on the streets of Ireland, the cruelty of the English continued as they passed the dead and the dying Irish with food and livestock bound for England. When in 1846, the Whigs political party came into power in Britain and put Charles Trevelyan in charge of famine relief in Ireland. Trevelyan was a big believer in the free market, where prices are determined by unrestricted competition between privately owned businesses. No government intervention in the economic system, including no legislative control over employment. Trevelyan didn't work at stopping the starvation and rather felt it was necessary, saying, quote, "The famine is an effective mechanism for reducing surplus population. It is the judgment of God that sent the famine to teach the Irish a lesson." He said,
What?
"The real evil is not the physical evil of the famine, but the moral evil of the selfish, perverse, and turbulent character of the Irish people." The food they offered to the starving was being limited, as food must not be given to the starving to not dispose the food industry. Many say there was food being imported into Ireland to help the starving, but it was largely being used to feed the cattle that would be slaughtered to feed the British. It was not being used to feed those in need. Any temporary relief measures being given to the Irish had stipulations. The British required that food only go to the people who owned no land, forcing the impoverished people to sell any remaining land they had to their landlords. When other countries such as America sent food to help the hungry, they found that the British charged exorbitant cargo fees, as the British wanted the food to be transferred to their ships. England profited from the Irish suffering, and in 1848, Charles Trevelyan was knighted for his work on the Irish famine relief.
Oh my goodness.
Landlords raised the tenants' rent so that they could evict them to use the land for farming, as it was more lucrative. When tenants could not pay for their rent, they were evicted and their homes demolished by order of Lord Palmerston, British Prime Minister. As many as 300,000 were evicted to die on the streets. Landlords were so eager to get rid of tenants that some of them offered to pay for their passage to America and Canada in exchange for their land. Many were desperate to escape in the famine. The landlords paid for the lowest class passage where it was overcrowded with sickness and disease, with poor access to food and water. 30% of passengers would perish and be buried at sea. These ships were called coffin ships, and over 2 million Irish left their beloved country, at least 600,000 never even making it across. Many Irish who were evicted and had no money to pay for their passage to America moved to impoverished areas of England to look for work. Anti-Irish prejudice was widespread. Those with Irish accents or Irish surnames were barred from getting employment and living in public houses. There were signs in the pubs and restaurants saying, "No Irish, no blacks, no dogs." And on help wanted signs, they added, "No Irish need apply." When the potato famine hit, the British government didn't try to help. Instead, the landlords saw it as an opportunity to make even more money from the land. They compared the removal of Irish in Ireland to the whites' removal of Indians in America. As the Irish died or left the country, a newspaper, the London Times, wrote, "Soon a Celtic Irishman will be as rare on the banks of the Liffey as a red man on the banks of the Manhattan.
Wow. Sometimes it's hard for me to. That is so like heartbreaking and selfish. The core of humanity is questionable. And the fact that religion has always been a tool for this evil is mind boggling, it's sickening. Religion has been the greatest tool for oppression for so long. Like, how dare him say the famine is a punishment from God? The Irish people are the bad people, not you who invaded their lands and took from them. And it makes me wonder, like, between our generation and the generation between before us, who is actually more cruel? Because I some people be like, oh, it was never this bad, and then you see histories like this and you realize that humanity has been as terrible as for forever. And I've always been a big fan of the Brits because they've never really been conquerable, or I like their military base and all of that. But I mean, hearing this right now is like, it's sickening, it's tummy turning, it's cruel that a human being will pass another human being dying of hunger and will not think to give them food. Like, how self-absorbed, self-righteous do anybody have to be this way? And not to mention that he was still knighted after this. Now that is so crazy, and it's like the whole world and everybody is just like close their eyes to it while people were dying. It's crazy. And even right now we have people closing their eyes to the famine in Gaza, and everybody is just closing their eyes to the obvious genocide of Gaza. And religion kind of just finds its way around every terrible, scary history. Religion always has a play, and it's just mind-boggling, really. But that's pretty much that on this. It's really it's enlightening and also heartbreaking to finally learn about this, because I used to see hints of this in cartoons and movies, and this is not actually how I thought it happened. I just thought there was like a disease, like a very, very huge disease in Ireland, and the only thing they ate there was potatoes, and all the potatoes were bad and they were dying. And that was actually my interpretation every time I would see a side comment in movies, in comedy shows, and all of that. But knowing that this happened because of the Brits is like, what in the world? Like, you could have saved millions of people, but you wanted to be greedy and selfish. And that is just wild and unnecessary. And wow, it's horrible. It's really horrible. Let me know if this is accurate, if you believe this is the truth in the comment section. Let me know your take. Excuse me. Let me know your take on this in the comment section. Let me know if you think like this is just unnecessarily evil, like very unnecessary. There is necessary evil, and then there is this just plain out unnecessary wickedness. Very, very mean, very, very mean. And I don't know, man, it's just heartbreaking. So yeah, please don't forget to support the channel by hitting the like button, subscribing, and supporting this journey on learning more about the history and the things that happened before me and things that happened before I was ever born. It's your way of supporting this journey and the journey of any Gen Z that is also watching this and trying to learn about the history as well. Until next time, guys. Bye.